Welcome to episode 100 of The Green Flame. We're delighted to have you here with us, not only listening, but this time being able to view us on YouTube. I am your host, Jennifer Murnan, and Max, would you like to join in?
Yeah, Jennifer, it's so great to be here with you. And my name is Max Wilbert, as you all know. This is a special episode 100 of the Green Flame podcast, and we're doing a live broadcast for the first time with some special guests.
Thank you for joining us. We'll do some introductions later, but we are joined at this time by Rebecca Wildbear, Renee Gerlich, and Carl Van Wan Carl Van
Warmerdam.
Warmerdam. There we go. The first snafu. Um, Thank you for joining us for this discussion today on the Green Flame. We plan to do an overview of where we've been and then move on to where we would like to be and what we would like to see and what we would like to do in the future. But first, Max has some announcements and some exciting announcements for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's rather fitting that this is coming with episode 100, but for those who aren't already aware, about a month ago now, just over a month ago, I stepped away from Deep Green Resistance after 15 years with the organization. The Green Flame is coming with me. It's now separated from DGR and is an independent project, but we're going to continue. I still agree with the strategy of DGR, the broad goals that we're pursuing. The reason that I stepped away, I'm not going to get into too many of the details, but essentially it comes down to some differences about leadership style and how to go about the work, the way to approach the work. But looking forward, I'm really excited to continue working with so many of the people that I worked with at DGR, both who are part of the organization, who are no longer with the organization, and who are allies and friends around the world. Some of the folks on this call and many others. And we're in the early stages of organizing a new group. We're looking at a confederation structure to bring together different organizations, campaigns, and groups all over the world so that they can maintain their autonomy, the ability to respond to the local situation and the context that they find themselves in, but also try and bring people together on a principled basis to collaborate, support each other's work, and lift each other up on some points of unity at an international level. So this is all in the very early stages. I wrote a brief article about this on my Substack newsletter. If folks are interested, I can share the link to it in the description for this podcast and in the video. And I'm looking forward about what comes next. It's definitely sad to move on from that organization after so long, after putting so much into it and pouring my heart into it. But I also feel a real sense of openness and possibility and trying to take all the lessons that I learned over my years there and apply them to the next projects and do things even better and bigger and more effective than in the past.
Thank you, Max. We are going to follow a bit of a structure. We're going to kind of do a retrospective and talk about our favorite episodes, what's happened already, where the green flame originated, and how it's developed. And then we're going to move into kind of a visioning project to see what we would like to do in the future and what we already have started and already have planned for the future. So that's pretty simple. But first, we're going to do some introductions. And I would ask Renee perhaps to start and introduce herself to the listeners and viewers.
Well, hi, I'm Renee. I am a feminist writer based in New Zealand in the wider Wellington region of New Zealand, Kapiti Coast specifically. Um, and well, 2 years ago, I published a book called Out of the Fog on politics, feminism, and coming alive. One of the primary themes of the book is something I have in common with some of the work that Max does and other members of DGR, the theme of toxic mimicry and distortion, that the way the system that we live in works is not by presenting us with fabrications, but by taking deep-seated needs that we have and then presenting us with substitutes and compensation. So that's a major theme of the work that I do and looking at how that works. But yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today, and congratulations on your 100th episode. Awesome to be, here and supporting the Green Flame.
Thank you, Renee. Carl, do you want to jump on and introduce yourself next?
Sure. I'm Carl. I'm on the east coast of Turtle Island in state of Rhode Island, which is called the Ocean State, but is quickly becoming the wind turbine state, as they're putting massive amounts, they're pile driving as we speak. And so I'm trying to stop that. I'm excited about the new organization, and also involved with Deep Sea Defenders, trying to stop mining of the deep sea.
Thank you, Carl. Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Rebecca Wildbear, and I'm author of Wild Yoga, a practice of initiation, veneration, and advocacy for the earth. And I do work with individuals and groups to help them commune with the wild world as a living being, as a conscious and living being who they can be in conversation with, and who they can receive guidance from about their own personal healing and purpose, as well as about our planetary purpose and what we can do faced with the problems of ecocide locally and globally. And I also work with people to listen to their dreams. I have a Substack letter I write about some of these ideas into called Radical Dreaming, but listening to our dreams for ideas and possibilities for solutions that we might not otherwise think of with our minds. And so, yeah, I also work with activist groups to try to help them listen to their dreams and talk to nature to source themselves in more ideas than are already out there about how to approach the complex problems that we're in the midst of.
Thank you, Rebecca, so much. This is a rather odd thing to ask, but Max, would you like to introduce yourself in a different way now that you've gone into a different stage of what you're doing with your life?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. Well, I think everyone who's watching probably knows me, but my name's Max Wilbert. I live in Oregon. I'm from Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, which is unceded Duwamish territory. This is unceded Kalapuya territory that I live on now. And I've been an activist for more than 20 years now, since I was pretty young, and have been involved in a variety of different work over the years. Most recently, I've been focused on the Protect Thacker Pass campaign to try and stop the lithium mine in Nevada. This 3.5 year fight now that we're losing to protect this very important biodiverse sacred site. But we have, I think, been successful in bringing the issue to broader attention and helping people to question the idea that technology is going to save the planet. That's something that I also have work to do through co-authoring Bright Green Lies, the book, and of course, if you've been listening to this podcast, then you're aware of that as well, because we've discussed these topics many times before. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thanks, Jennifer.
So I'd like to just introduce myself as well, just in case there's somebody who is new to the Green Flame and is jumping in at episode 100. I live on the occupied lands of the Cheyenne Arapaho people on the Front Range of the Colorado Rockies. I live on a small therapy farm, and I am a permaculturist and a grandmother, and I love the land that I'm inhabiting. I love these podcasts. I love doing the Green Flame and practicing listening to profoundly wise and insightful people. And I'm delighted to be here today with all of you to have this discussion. The first thing we'd like to do is just to kind of jump in about what we've heard, what we've already heard on the Green Flame, and what we've loved about it. And I will go ahead and jump in and just say briefly that every voice that I've heard on the Green Flame has affected me profoundly, has changed my perspective, has become part of who I am, and that I've taken in deeply. Some of the history of the Green Flame is it was very slow to start. There was a lot of spinning around and a lot of ideas and a lot of prototypes. And then Max jumped in and sparks began to fly. And we started out with some of my favorite episodes. It's hard to pick a favorite, but perhaps the radical feminism episode was one of the best. And Beth Quist is one of the artists that has contributed her work. And that episode soared because of the music that she's contributed to this show. So it is not only analysis, it is not only listening to these voices, it is also creative expression. And one of the ideas at the onset of the program is to have skill sharing. And that has been off again, on again. But I hope that, we'll see more of that. Another thing that happened in the Green Flame, not specific to an episode, was this coming back and revisiting. And Renee is so very much a part of that. I think that I think that we've listened to your voice and your insight something like 4 times now, and that's going to happen again. And Rebecca, hiking with you was just amazing. Doing that on the land was just such a beautiful experience. I loved Shaida Janjua's voice. I will never forget her. And I learned so much from her in such a brief period of time. So those are a few of the highlights. I love coming back again and again. It feels like the Green Flame has become a community. Carl, you were episode 99. And would you like to go next and talk about your favorites?
Well, we did cover that last episode, and that was with the Jami. And that's what got me to get involved in DGR. But there's all kinds of episodes that stuck with me. All updates from Thacker Pass and other protests. Fairy Creek. Yeah, so I mean, they're just all good. I mean, Will Falk did some really nice ones on Protect Thacker Pass that were notable. So yeah, that's what got me involved. If you want to hear that whole story again, that's on episode 99. Go back and listen. So you can always go back and listen to episodes. And I do do the news service for DGR, still do that. And so I will take as they fit, onto an article, I'll take one of the episodes from the Green Flame and post it on there.
Thank you, Carl. Rebecca, do you have a favorite?
Well, I'm reminded of ones I was involved with first, and there's been several. There was the hike one that we did, which was amazing because we got to be on the land together and in communion with the land while we were recording and bringing the land to people. And then there's also a one that I think we did on the Zambezi, protecting the Zambezi River with a few people. the Zambezi River I've been to. So, and I love rivers in general. So it was great to be involved in that. And also, I think there's one I did with Max and Will on Thacker Pass when Thacker Pass was just starting off. So that was really great to be involved in the beginning of that. And then I know there was one done on ecology of spirit. And even though I wasn't on that Green Flame episode, I was a part of that longer series that was done with a number of people. And it's a discussion that I love because it's one I'm very passionate about in my life. I come more from the background of having a spiritual approach to the land and to dreams, and so I've been trying to bridge that gap because, as you know, there's a gap kind of between people who do spirituality and personal work, and then sometimes people who do activism. They're like and they're not brought together. So I love how that episode really works to talk about how they're both important and actually really quite related. Um, and yeah, and I also liked many of the other ones that I wasn't involved with. And it's interesting, Carl, that you mentioned Fairy Creek because that was at the top of my list too. I love that story. I suppose I love it because it's one that really involved a lot of people, and also because it's one that involves big old trees, which are some of my favorite living beings on the planet. And I also think it shows the real atrocity of the state of the world, and kind of speaks to ecocide all over, and the state of the world as police and forces actually participating in the ecocide and the level of violence against activists. So anyway, yeah, there's so many good episodes. I tend to be drawn to. There were several done earlier too about protecting forests and trees. That's one of my favorite topics. There's really so many great topics, and they seem to all come back to highlighting, really highlighting, ecocide in all of its many ugly faces. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to jump in real quick, Rebecca and Carl, you both mentioned Fairy Creek. I don't know if this is actually known to many people, listeners, or many of you, but episode 33 was called Clear Cuts and Poisoned Rivers with Will Falk and Joshua Wright. I believe, if my memory is correct, it was sort of a two-part episode. We spoke with Will about, I think, the Ohio River Basin. I believe at the time he was traveling in that region and writing and doing research and organizing on the pollution in the Ohio River Basin. And then I spoke with Joshua, who was, at the time, he must have been 18 or 19 years old. And he was living in Washington State and traveling up to British Columbia, Canada, researching the destruction of old growth forests and specifically looking at satellite images of these old growth ancient forest areas on Vancouver Island that had never been logged before, and comparing them with the logging lease sales. However that process plays out in Canada, I'm not familiar with the details, but the leases of these lands to logging companies to cut the trees. And episode 33, I'm looking at the timestamp on my computer here. It says July 15th, 2020. Episode 37 was about the Fairy Creek movement. That was August 19th, 2020. That's the timestamp on the file that I have. And it was actually partly as a result of the conversation that Joshua and I had in July 2020 that led him to reaching out to some mutual contacts of ours on Vancouver Island, forest defense activists, and helping to kick off the entire Fairy Creek movement. So in a strange, somewhat roundabout way, this podcast played a small but significant role in the largest act of civil disobedience in Canadian history, which is having significant ramifications. Obviously, a lot of that forest has been cut, but the movement has been incredibly strong. It continues to be strong and to push back against the destruction of these old growth forests successfully in some cases. So I'm not sure if y'all know that story, but it's just one of the powerful ways that I think this show, by bringing together grassroots activists and people who are leaders in their communities all over the world, can play an important role in sparking, new creative forms of resistance and getting the right people together and connected at the right time.
Mm. Thank you, Max. I did not know all of that.
Part of the lore, part of the deep lore of this show.
Gonna write a book?
Oh, I don't know if I've got another book project I'm working on, but that's a whole nother story.
Renee, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Well, that was a beautiful story, actually, first of all, Max. And I feel like it definitely speaks to, I mean, I'm here at the moment in New Zealand, and a lot of the activists who I speak to, who I've met through, say, deep green resistance, we all have in common this sense of, I don't want to say isolation, that sounds too melodramatic, but not all of us are really connected to local communities, people with who we can have these discussions. And I feel like that story really speaks to how the Green Flame is not just about reporting on events, but how it keeps these communities alive across the globe and active. And I think that's beautiful and amazing. And I guess as far as episodes, I don't know if I have favorite episodes. But I do have favorite themes. Like I I was listening recently to a talk interview you did, Max, with, you're gonna have to help me with his name, Frank, the movement teacher.
Frank Forensic. Yeah.
Forensic. And the both of you began to talk about the importance of vision, having a vision, which really kind of stands in contrast to how radical environmentalists are often seen as being these kind of hard materialists who, you know, have a kind of militant outlook. And yeah, I feel like the theme of vision is something that comes up a lot in Green Flame podcast episodes, at least the ones I've listened to. And I know Frank in that episode, he had this line where he said, all of humanity needs to go on a vision quest, which I really liked. And I think I did also hear the episode with you, Rebecca. And I remember I remember you were hiking because you could hear the crunch of like pebbles and leaves. And I loved that about it as well, that kind of biophilic aspect of the podcast. And also like that theme of dreams again, you know, that Rebecca speaks to. It's like this vision is not intellectually derived. It's not, you know, like a kind of Marxist intellectual template for a future blueprint that we're all supposed to be working toward. It's a vision that springs from those aspects of our humanity that get repressed in the industrial capitalist culture that we're all living in. So it's a reawakening of parts of ourselves that we have to put aside to go through the motions of life. And I feel like that is such an important component of environmentalism and of activism today. And so I feel really thankful to constantly hear that through the Green Flame. Jennifer, we were talking recently and you pointed me to the interview you did with attorney Bobby Chan in the Philippines, and I listened to that one as well. And he was talking about so you might have to help me. So they have this kind of citizens group of citizens who act to enforce laws around like environmental regulations that law enforcement doesn't actually enforce, and with a lot of violent backlash and no funding to speak of. And he was talking about, you know, like, what is the secret of how they actually sustain this work? And he was like, you were talking to me about this, Jennifer, and it was great to hear him speak to it.
Yes, he blew me away at the end of the interview. He completely blew me away at the end of the interview about where all of that power comes from for those citizens. And Max, you've been there. So
yes.
You want to speak more about your experience in the Philippines? Did you meet that man in person?
Didn't meet him. I didn't have the chance. No, the COVID pandemic cut my trip short. So we were stuck on Luzon, which is the northern main island where Manila is located. and I believe he lives on one of the further south islands, which I think we were planning to go to, but unfortunately the travel ban went in, and the Europe travel ban, and I just said I need to get a ticket to get home. So I bought an emergency ticket for the next day because I thought
Wow.
I better get home.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did. Let's see. I'm looking at the list of episodes. I remember we've had quite a few episodes about the Philippines. We've had conversations with Ja in spring of 2021 about that. But it was back in 2020 or 2019 when I was in the Philippines, and it was April of 2020 that we released our episode called Colonization and Resistance in the Philippine Archipelago, episode number 21, which was I enjoyed so thoroughly. It was a large part of that episode was a conversation I had with this very experienced activist, community organizer, herbal medicine practitioner, lover of the land. This woman, uh, as we were walking through these fields alongside the edge of the forest, in one of the provinces, the rural areas, a few hours south of Manila, as at this gathering, this sort of environmental community gathering, that I was brought to, that I attended with, our friends and our allies in that area, and that we talked about the history of colonization in the archipelago, the Spanish, and then the United States. The Japanese were in there briefly in between during World War II, and we just talked about the long history of resistance in the archipelago, and it was a really powerful conversation for me, particularly. But I know, I'm not sure if you were done, Renee, and I know before we
Yes.
started, you were saying you had some questions for us too about the Green Flames origin story.
Ah,
I don't know if Jennifer covered that all. I want this conversation to just flow and be open, so feel free to jump back in or take us in a different direction, and we can always circle back around to the questions that are on our agenda and on our plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have more that you wanted to say, Renee, about the Great
no,
Plains?
just speaking to the dialogue between, yeah, this idea of vision, but also how that vision is relates back to the earth, like how in Rebecca's work, dreams come through and from the earth. And I was I know Will Falk as well did an interview where he was talking about defending the rights of the Colorado River. Um, how does that, yeah, like the what is establishing like the personhood of natural beings in law. And I feel like he referred to the Colorado River like a million times. You hear Colorado River the whole time you're listening. So it's not like, and he talks about like traveling up and down the river, asking it like he would ask any client as a lawyer, who are you and what do you need, and how like, so then the vision kind of comes through that way. And yeah, I feel like this is a recurring theme in Green Flame podcasts that I find really, yeah, really positive and enlivening. That's all. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Renee. Max, do you have some favorites?
It's really hard to say. There are so many. It's amazing, just looking back. This project started in 2019, and you kind of glossed over this, Jennifer, but there was an earlier attempt to start a radio program or a podcast that you and another mutual friend led, probably back in what, 2017 or something like that?
Hmm.
16.
Right, right. We got together in the same physical space and had a lot of fun spinning ideas and thinking about doing a news segment, and it had a lot of variety to it.
Yeah.
A little bit different than this one. Yeah.
But for one, I just want to say thank you, because for folks who don't know, Jennifer has a lot of experience. Oh, here's Saba. She's jumping in.
Yay.
Jennifer has quite a bit of experience with community radio on the Colorado Front Range, going into the studio, recording programs, interviewing people in a much more professional setting than this sort of informal podcast environment that we have here. And so that from the beginning, that really helped give me and everyone else who was involved in the program a lot of confidence that at least one of us knew what the hell we were doing. and it's been really amazing to just see, 5 years. I mean, the first episode is timestamped here, April 4th, 2019. So just over 5 years to get to 100 episodes, 20 episodes a year, not a super high rate every couple, 2-3 weeks. But the reality is we're doing this project in the time that we have available. This isn't our full-time thing. We're not making a living from this. We're organizers, we have jobs, we're involved in campaigns. Jennifer's got grandkids crawling over her half the time. I got nephews trying to body slam me when I visit my family. So, we're not on that type of regular production schedule. We're doing this when we can, and sometimes there's going to be 3 episodes in 3 weeks, and sometimes there won't be one for a couple months.
And I just want to jump in and say that's one of the really invigorating things about the Green Flame is the absolute freedom. Yeah, I have a little bit of experience with community radio, and I know what it's like to be in the box, and I know what it's like to be here. And it's wildly inventive, and you can dream it, you can do it. So anyway, I want to say that, Max. Thanks for the compliment, but I like this better. I like this better.
Well, Saba's joined us, so I want to welcome Saba, and then I want to come back to your question, Jennifer, about my favorite episodes, because there are a lot that I want to shout out and mention, a lot of amazing people. But Saba, we're live, so I'm glad you could be with us. We're just going around talking a little bit about who we are. We introduced ourselves and talking about the history of the Green Flame, some of our favorite episodes. You were on episode number 2, which is from May 2019.
I didn't know I was episode number 2.
You were the main interview in episode number 2 all the way back then, which was one of my favorites.
What did I talk about?
The title was Self-Defense and War. I remember that part of the conversation was me asking you about your experience in Hunza in Pakistan when you visited there, and discussing that whole story with you. Folks should go back and listen to that episode. It's amazing. But
God, I think I will, because I don't remember. Like, I mean, I know what I may have said, but I don't remember that, How it was 5 years ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Been quite a while.
Well, it's lovely to be here. I didn't know. I'm probably going to have to. Unfortunately, my house has been invaded by unexpected guests, and I've been taking care of a 3-year-old. Now I have to go and do the groceries because Shazad hasn't been able to, because all these people came around, and some of them have just left, and I'm a bit annoyed, because it's my Sunday, and I had it all planned out that I would be able to be on the call today, and but I can be for a little bit. I can be on for the next 15 minutes. So I just joined.
Thank you.
Okay.
Glad you're here, Saba.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for the brilliant interviews that you've done, and it's lovely to see. Hang on, I'll put the video on. I'm in the car, as you can see. It's lovely to see everyone's faces. Rebecca, I don't think we've met. I don't think I know you, but I've heard very much about you.
Glad you're here, Saba.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, so I can jump back in, and Saba, maybe some of what I say will spark your brain a little bit, because we're talking about some of our favorite episodes, and I'd love to hear some of them that really stuck in your mind over the years. But when I'm looking back over this list, I'm seeing Jennifer, your discussion with Claude Marks on COINTELPRO, powerful, learning from elders who've been involved in radical and revolutionary work for decades and decades and decades. I'm looking back to episode 11, an excerpt about the Native women and the role that Native women from, I believe, the Iroquois Confederacy. I may be wrong, but if my memory is serving me right, from the Iroquois Confederacy and their influence on the early women's suffrage movement and the early feminist movement in the United States.
That's a revelation. Thanks for bringing that one up, Max.
Yeah, the conversation that we had with Marie Boyne,
Oh, wow.
the
Yeah.
Sami, the famous Sami musician who's won many, many awards for her music. That whole conversation that we had on colonialism, episode 12, was so powerful. And Keala Kelly, Kanaka Maoli, a friend of ours, a native Hawaiian woman. The list just goes on and on. Of course, Shida, our conversation with Shida Janjua, who is no longer with us.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, powerful.
Did you, just interested, did you ever interview anyone from the Unistoten camp?
That's a good question, Saba, and I don't think that we have. I should reach out to one of those folks at some point here, try and get them on the show. That's a great idea. And if folks are listening or following the show, any of you who are here have more ideas, let us know. We actually have a big backlog. We probably have a list of about 20 people that we want to interview, and we squeeze them in where we can. Let's see, episode 24 with Esther Figueroa on aluminum mining in Jamaica. Powerful bauxite mining for aluminum. Really powerful interview, a story that is, as far as I know, essentially unknown to anyone inside the United States. This case of a colony in the Caribbean so close to the United States being treated brutally as an extractive sacrifice zone. I see Sarah Marie in our chat on YouTube is asking about Marie Boyne. I'm probably saying her name wrong because it's been 4 years since I've said it.
I think you're doing all right, Max.
Yeah, episode 12, Sarah Marie. Go back and check it out. Powerful show. The conversations about Fairy Creek. Let's see. The conversation about the Zambezi that you mentioned, Rebecca, powerful. Interview with Frank Ferengic, number 44. Communities That Protect and Resist, episode 47. Organizing with Ajamu Umi, episode 52. Carl, I know one of your favorites. Great conversation. I loved that one. Nuclear waste conversation. Protect Thacker Pass in March 2021, the first show I believe that we released with Protect Thacker Pass, which I think, Rebecca, that's probably the episode that you were on, that you mentioned earlier. We have film discussions, movie book discussions, Asada, the book Asada about Asada Shakur, The Corporation, the film The Corporation, I Am Not Your Negro, the documentary film. Episode 64 about Nordic animism with Rune Rasmussen. That was a powerful one. It just goes on and on, the list, and that's just up to 2021. That doesn't even include the last about 35 episodes. Diane Wilson from down in Texas talking about her work, Hannah Bowman on the YPJ and the Kurdish freedom movement in the Middle East, in the Kurdish region around Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Larch Maxey on HS2 resistance, this high-speed train resistance movement in the UK. A lot of really powerful shows here. So I don't know if that. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Saba, please. No, go for it.
Did you ever interview Dominique?
We've had Dominique's poetry on the show, I believe, but I don't think we've interviewed her.
We've never
That's
interviewed.
Another great idea.
Just done the poetry, yeah.
And then I would love to see, especially in light of what just happened, is Chris Hedges be interviewed about what's happening with the media. I mean, it's been happening for a while, but it's really like cracking down in this country. And now I believe what he said that he's going to go completely independent because first he got kicked off what was the Truth Dig, and then now the Real News Network. So I'd love to see him interviewed.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been following his articles and would love to have Chris as a guest on here. He's in high demand right now at the moment because of everything that's happening in Gaza. But I will definitely reach out to him. I actually have Chris's email from back from the Earth at Risk days, that conference that Saba and I helped organize back in 2014. And I've emailed him a few times over the years, but usually he hasn't gotten back to me. I imagine his inbox is a disaster zone to rival some of these open pit mine sites.
Wow.
But I can relate, as can we all, I think. So yeah, so many powerful episodes. And then Renee, episode 88 with you. We had Joshua again on to talk about Fairy Creek a bit more retrospectively, episode 92. And then episode 98, just 2 episodes ago, the conversation that I had with Joshua, but mostly with this Tlingit elder, Wanda Culp, about this sort of greenwashed, or as they're calling it, indigewashed project to privatize 60,000 acres of old growth forest in Southeast Alaska, in the Tongass National Forest. Really powerful conversation, and Wanda is just amazing. It was incredible to speak with her about this. So episode 82 with Stephanie Say, amazing wild buffalo defender who lives up in Montana. An amazing 75 with Jor, who made the great film Stare Into the Lights, My Pretties, and other films. Just an amazing, stunning filmmaker, somebody who
And
really...
that's one of my favorites too. I'd forgotten about that one. And his music backs that entire episode too. And he's just so talented on so many levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear, I'll just mention a couple, Vince Emanuel and Dar Jamel. And these are people, when I listened to the podcast, I didn't know who these people were. So then I would, even Renee or Rebecca or Saba, I would just go back then, okay, now I have to find out, that was a great, I got to find out about these people, so that's, yeah, it's just amazing the individuals that were on the show, their resistance, their fortitude, and it's just wonderful to know that there's people out there that are doing that work. So it's great. I wouldn't, if without the podcast, I wouldn't have learned about them. So
yeah. On that note, I thought I might also shout out to Kim Hill, who you've interviewed, Jennifer, and done interviews alongside on the Australian fires, but also COVID. Yeah, so she's is Australian environmentalist who can do some really clear articulation on the workings of disaster capitalism, in response to like the Australian fires and COVID, which she spoke to, which I felt, it's really refreshing to hear voices, especially in your broader region of the world, and discover them through the Green Flame. So yeah, she's one person who I didn't know about until I listened to those episodes.
And that's one of the things that's so surprising. I never fail to be surprised by the people that I've interviewed on the Green Flame. With Kim, you think you know where you're going, and then there's lyricism and poetry and spirituality that's right there, that comes out. And it's stunning sometimes to me how much I learn and how much I hear in these voices that I just have to very, just to be very adventurous and to expect the unexpected all the time. And on that note of kind of visioning, that idea, Chris Hedges would be great. Right around the corner is one of the authors that I have learned to love completely. Her name's Linda Hogan, and she's an hour down the road. Renee, how is it that the Green Flame is bringing people that are literally at your door to you on your side of the world? That's giving me a few shivers right now to think that we have managed to cast a net that far out and find that many people. And now we've got even more ahead of us. There's so much more to be discovered. Max, had you finished with what you wanted to say about your favorites? And that was a beautiful overview, by the way. You reminded us of so much.
I could go on and on. I mean, episode 71 with Salonika, talking about some of the issues in Nepal. Yeah, you mentioned the episode with Kim Hill in Australia and bushfires. Thanks for reminding us of that, Renee. Um, every every single conversation that we've had through this has been incredibly powerful, and I think that that's something to me that is very affirming about doing a show like this, is that a podcast, this long form of having a dialogue with people, having a conversation with people, in detail, discussing the nuance of these issues, allows for a human connection that is difficult in other formats. It's very challenging. I'm going to talk a bit later about, well, I could just do it right now. We've got some upcoming episodes that I'm really looking forward to. One of them's with Renee. We had a 3-hour, was it 3.5 hour conversation about spirituality and activism and resistance and the relationship between those things. We couldn't stop talking. We couldn't hang up. We had to stop literally because of exhaustion, not because of running out of things to say. And that we actually had that conversation probably like 3 or 4 months ago, maybe more. But it's our editor has just been it takes a lot of time to produce a show like that and try and deliver you something that's a little shorter and a little more concise than 3.5 hours. We have an upcoming show. I just interviewed a week or two ago Roger Hallam, who's the guy who co-founded Extinction Rebellion, somebody who I have some pretty significant disagreements with, which is actually true with a lot of people we've had on the show. We don't agree on everything, but we connect and we discuss and we find those points of shared overlap and we learn from each other. It's a two-way flow. And that's something that I really appreciate about this show. We have a pending show, a conversation about Myanmar with Alan Clements, the former Buddhist monk who some of you may recognize from our recent event. Jennifer, I know you've got this road trip show that you've been working on producing for a while. Do you want to mention that?
Oh, I would love to mention that. One of the things that's happened as a result of this show is finding people all over the planet, literally, and then knowing deeply that you have to be able to share space and you have to be able to come face to face. There's this compelling draw to join into community that intimately. So Michelle Martin and I jumped on board and made a road trip out to go visit women's lands. And it happened with joy and spontaneity and with a lot of spirit in it, blessings to the road all the way. And road trips, I think, are something that kind of evolve out of connection, that you draw each other closer together. And we've already mentioned how much these conversations and meeting here has led to activism, has contributed to activism, has contributed to defending the land and bringing our community closer together. So yeah, I'm really excited about that one. And it's fun, and it's also got some unexpected elements in it. You always find those on the road. I mean, Renee, you can talk about that. And all you did was float around last year, and you came right in my door. You came right in my door.
I didn't expect to be in Colorado, and I didn't expect to be in Thacker Pass either when
Exactly.
I left New Zealand. Yeah.
And you also bounced the 3-year-old grandbabies about a bit. So
Yeah, they're lovely.
we all get
Gorgeous,
together.
gorgeous family. Mm.
Mm-hmm. And that's such an important element.
Mm.
So I'd like to ask a question of the guests and everyone who's on the call, which is, what are you working on right now? Because with some of you I know a little bit, but I'm sure the audience doesn't. And you're all brilliant people who are involved in some really incredible work. So this episode isn't really the proper format to dive deep and get a full explanation of what you're working on, which I'd love to do with all of you again at some point. But just give us a little taste and overview of what are you excited about? What are you passionate about right now? What's on your list? What are you working on? Rebecca, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll leap in. I've started writing on a new book called Playing and Praying, soul-infused stories to revive, rattle, and revolutionize our world. And it's more of a story focus. And there'll also be some practices in it. And I have a Substack, so I write on a regular basis. And I work with individuals, and groups, and activists, and any people. Really, my larger trajectory is trying to shift the perception of humanity to see the human world as life, full of life and animate, to recognize that we have muse. And we have dreams, and we have all sorts of assistance from other voices, really lesser heard voices of our psyche in the world than just other humans, and really to shake up and dismantle our everyday world by bringing more power to those voices in humans and in the world, through my writing and my work with individuals and groups.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I've shared this on the podcast before, but for those who haven't heard it, I was at one of Rebecca's programs in October of 2020, right before I visited Thacker Pass for the first time. And the experience that I had there, facilitated by her and another guide, of being on the land, doing a lot of intensive journaling and self-reflection, and analyzing and thinking about my dreams, reflecting on my dreams, and going out and asking for answers from the land, asking for visions and information and guidance, was really profoundly inspirational and shaped the entire course of the Thacker Pass campaign. It wouldn't have happened without the experience that I had there with you. So thank you again for that. And I think it's profoundly important work. And I really admire that you have come to a point of trying to connect work that I've heard you talk about as being very important, but largely sort of personal focused and inward looking, to larger external activism and resistance and organizing to defend the planet. And my experience personally has been that there are a lot of activists who are really wonderful, have a lot of motivation, have potentially some great strategic thinking, but who are not internally resourced, are playing out patterns of trauma inside ourselves. I won't say themselves because it's me too, inside ourselves, that whereby we undermine ourselves, we undercut our own work, we talk down to ourselves, we question our own ability to make change in the world. And similarly, I've seen a lot of people who have done really profound internal work, but have never turned that beautiful and important internal work to the external world, and to giving more broadly, and to seeing a need for organization and resistance, and tying the internal work to political struggles. And so I think that the approach that you take in bringing those worlds together is really important and overlooked at our own peril. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Max. Yeah, it's been wonderful to be able to work with you too, on projects, you and other activists, to really be able to see, to bring these together and to acknowledge that it's important. One of the things I love to say is our wellness and the planet and the wellness of the planet are linked. They're not separate. So when people focus on personal growth or wellness, like they're somehow going to have a good life or get vision for their personal goals and leave out the planet, it's insanity. We can't leave out the planet. Like we're totally connected. So any wellness plans, platforms, activist platforms, spiritual platforms, personal growth platforms, absolutely need to include the earth and what are we doing for the earth.
Yeah, thank you. Renee, do you want to jump in next? Do you want to share anything? You don't have to, of course, no pressure. But
Have you got 3.5 hours? Yeah, well, as you know, Max, I am also working on a book, which was one of the things that we spoke about, both at Thakapas and when we did that extended interview last year. So it also speaks a lot to what you were just saying, and conversing with Rebecca about. So my book is called A World Without Rape, and the subtitle used to be, I just had a big rant to Jennifer about this recently because I've been on a writer's high for like 3 weeks now. So I just had this big penny drop moment that's like writer's gold, where all these things start falling into place by themselves, and the only problem becomes like that things keep coming to you and interrupting your daily life and waking you up at night and all that kind of thing. But yeah, so I have a lot of momentum with the project, and it comes through partly the subtitle has changed. So previously I was the subtitle was Reflections on Feminism and Spirituality. So I was really trying to reconcile these two paradigms, because like feminism to me had been a lot of work in trying to draw attention to what women face in a patriarchal culture and a rape culture, in a world that doesn't want to hear about it. And then we've spoken about this, Max, that in the course of doing this work, I kind of ended up alienated, and that took me over to spirituality. And then I spent a long time trying to understand how these two worlds can connect, and even whether a world without rape is something that actually, in some sense, already exists within and has to be brought out into the world, rather than that it's a hypothetical situation that we have to try to create. And yeah, recently the subtitle changed to a restoration, or potentially even a manifesto for the restoration of human integrity. So that really, I really came to understand exactly what it means to reconcile the world of, I guess, activism and spirituality for me, and how it, yeah, it comes again back to that idea of vision, and needing to go beyond what you were saying, Max, just now, the conditioned mind, so that you don't replicate it through your work. And how, from vision comes your language, your speech, your way of perceiving the world around you, and from that comes action. But yeah, so yeah, I'm really busy working on that manuscript. It does incorporate a lot of my travels in the States, so has some discussions in it with you, Max, about the hungry ghosts that are leading to, for instance, the mining at Thakapas, and actually leads me to want to say something about someone I would love to hear interviewed on the Green Flame, so you can add it to your never-ending list. While I've been working on this manuscript and looking at these two worlds and the places where they connect and also apparently diverge, I've been getting more and more involved in yoga, like Rebecca. So, but when you go into that world, you see a lot of kind of the denial of material reality. So one example is I went to the Isha ashram in Tennessee and I did a woman-only program. There were about 100 women there. We had to go through, we at some point were sharing experiences, traumatic experiences in our lives. And every single woman who shared something, it incidentally, not intentionally, turned out to be an experience of male violence. And many of them were extremely disturbing beyond what I'd ever heard before myself. So it was a really rattling event. And then afterward, I actually pointed out to one of the women the pattern, and she immediately dismissed it, tried to minimize it or suggest that, there was no such pattern, or you couldn't generalize it in that way. And then on the flip side, moving in feminist circles or activist circles where you have the opposite, where you're very exposed to these patterns, but you're not supposed to go into the spiritual world or go to yoga classes to do anything about it, because that's supposed to be the denial. But yeah, anyway, I have been very involved with Isha, the yoga schools in Tennessee, and I also went to Coimbatore, and it's such a massive movement at the moment, not just yoga, but specifically Isha and under Sadhguru, who's a massively influential figure at the moment. And he runs a campaign called Save Soil, which is huge. And it's just incredible to me, because on some level, people who do yoga are kind of inclined toward denying material events and patterns and things like that. They're susceptible to that, I found. But on the other hand, there's something about this culture which has enabled that Save Soil campaign to be ginormous. And I've always been intrigued about what would happen if somebody from the Save Soil campaign were to get in dialogue with someone from Green Flame or someone like yourself, Max. So I feel like there would be a lot to learn, but I mean, potentially also ways that the Save Soil campaign is limited. I don't know. But yeah, I would be intrigued about what that dialogue would look like. So that's a very long answer to your questions. What am I doing at the moment?
I'm writing the list.
Save Soil, yeah.
Save Soil.
Yes, it's just such a big campaign with so many volunteers who are all mobilized by one of the primary teachings of the ashram and of Sadhguru, which is responsibility. So, and a lot of self-help teachers and spiritual teachers these days, Gabor Mate included, they break that word responsibility up into two. So it's the ability to respond. You have the ability to respond, and reclaiming the ability to respond is essentially reclaiming your life. And the ashram, both in Coimbatore in India and in Tennessee, runs on this premise, like there's no kind of sense of dogmatic guru worship or anything. I mean, there's a lot of devotion, but there's not this sense of I had a friend who was worried about me following a guru because, we're all mind controlled and stuff like that. But it's not like that. There's a sense of everyone reclaiming this responsibility. And it seems to me to be what's running this Save Soil campaign and leading people to really take on the issue of soil for themselves. And I find that really something. So it's a campaign worth looking into, I think.
Thank you very much, Renee.
Hmm.
Carl, do you want to share anything?
Well, Saba, do you want to go? Do you have to take off?
I can go quickly because
Okay.
I'm in the line, and when it's my turn, then I should stop speaking. But I'll be very quick. I mean, I think Max knows and Jennifer knows that I work with at-risk youth in my local community, and trying to bring some ecological literacy to them and take them to the small urban farm that a good friend of mine started, and also get them involved in this urban reforestation program called Canopy. Because like Rebecca, I totally agree. I mean, there's so many sick people in the world. Like, there's so much sickness, and people are, it's like people are surprised almost when they get sick, and yet we're living on a planet that's being killed. So, when all of the essential systems that bring us anything of real meaning have been so affected, it seems amazing to me that people expect to be well, like themselves. So that's part of it. The other thing that and this is totally brand new, so I had been thinking, because of this new organization, this new coalition, or sorry, what we're trying to set up, the new organization with Max and a bunch of other people, I have been thinking about how I can help materially, as in with money, and thinking about what my gifts are. And it's funny because I was asked by Shazad's best friend if I want to give it a go, starting a catering business with him. And he asked me many years ago, and I didn't say yes, because it felt like too overwhelming. But this time I think if, there's one thing that I can do that. I can do that. If there's one thing I think that I'm really good at, it's cooking and understanding flavor. And that's what he says. He's like, I don't know anyone who understands flavor the way you do, and I can't think of anyone else I'd want to go into business with. And he's already set up an LLC. And so I'm hoping that if we can make it work and we can make it lucrative, that could be really helpful for the new organization. So I'm not clever like everyone else. I'm not writing a book or anything like that. I'm going to give this a go. So that's me.
Not clever. Saba is way, way too humble. One of the most brilliant people I know, and somebody who I've learned so much from and continue to. Thank you, Saba. That's exciting. That's the first I've heard of this. So, and I know, as anyone who has visited Saba and had the pleasure, she is a fantastic cook. So I could see that being very successful. Carl, you want to jump in now?
Sure. So the U.S. government is pretty much selling off not only all the BLM land for solar panels, but they have sold off pretty much all of the East Coast outer continental shelf to offshore wind leases. So it is just horrendous, and they've been doing it at breakneck speed to get as much done as quickly as possible before an opposition could even be pushed against it, which is growing now. But it's just insanity, and just trying to fight that. And that's a behemoth because so much money is being thrown at it. And they've already got, so that a lot of the ships are there. That's because they've already done the European continent in the North Sea. So they have all the factories in place. So they're coming out, the turbines are coming out of Spain. And they just want to make use of them and get them up, and they will be, it's just they're essentially useless. Wind is probably the worst, and out in the ocean they'll deteriorate. Probably they have a lifespan of 15 years. And then they'll just declare bankruptcy, and those monsters, invasive species, will be sitting out there, and they'll have destroyed probably the premier fishing grounds of this country. So the promise of all these green jobs at the loss of our total fishing industry. So we'll have wind farms out in our ocean, and we'll have to go buy our fish from fish farms in those Nordic countries, Norway particularly. And they now, because the orcas, there's not enough salmon for orca, they want to feed them fish farmed salmon. And the herring stocks in the Baltic Sea are heading toward extinction because trawlers catch those fish, and that fish is chopped up to feed farmed salmon. So it is just insanity upon insanity, commodifying everything. I don't know when it stops. So then I'm also trying to fight deep sea mining with deep sea defenders, because there's not enough minerals on the land. They have to go destroy the oceans, and that's what they're doing. And it's just, I hope the financial, I mean, the finances have been hard for them because of inflation, and the interest rates are high. So they've had to back out of a lot of contracts that they made. So I'm just hoping for a financial collapse to put them totally under. So I got that, and just locally trying to stop development here in town. Simple stuff.
Thank you, Carl. Jennifer, how about you?
Well, I am very inspired to put as much time and effort as I can into the Green Flame right now, and to try to work with this program to find even more community members. I'm also very inspired to go and visit places, not as a tourist, but to offer whatever I have to give. I would really like to get out to New Zealand. I would really like to get to the Philippines. I've heard so much about the good people there and the struggles there, and I'm hoping that I can find a way to get out there and offer what Communities that Protect and Resist has to offer whatever skills I have, permaculture, if they're asked for. That's always the prerequisite for it. If it's asked for and I can contribute, that's where I want to go. I mean, and then, it's pure joy being face to face with comrades in the struggle. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. I've been in a program with matriarchal studies with Hagia for 2.5 years now. The first part of my thesis explaining that societal structure has been accepted by that organization, and I'm off to writing the second part. And that one is very, very much going to be about human societies are only as strong as their relationships with the land that they inhabit and the biological communities that they're part of. And so what I hope to do with the second part of that thesis is look at ethically what is underneath our communities And if those community ethics are about land connection, then we need to go back to the basis of the source of our life and make sure that we are nurturing the land that we inhabit. And if it's not happening, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what the societal structure is on top of it. I mean, some societal structures, of course, patriarchy and capitalism are always going to violate, but there are lots of ways that we go astray. And so I'm in search of communal structures that can once again live in balance with the land that we inhabit. And we have to be more, I think, than we've ever been before. We have to give back so much, and we have to nurture so much. We have to be so altruistic, and we have that capacity as human beings. So I'm very interested in communal structures, how we interact with each other, how we make those new communal structures, how we struggle together. And everything that's been said so far as we've had this dialogue has made me realize how much the green flame has given to me in the journey that I'm on, and how much more I'm going to be finding.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I think that's it. That, and I'm running around after 3-year-olds with brand new eyes. And it's glorious.
Yeah, well, thank you. The next generation coming up. It's really important, and the influence that we have on these kids is huge. I will never forget getting this text from my sister probably a year and a half ago, and it was my nephews, who were about 3 and 5 at the time, and they were playing in the sandbox, and they were digging a hole, and my sister said that they were saying, let's play a game where you pretend to be the mining company, and I'll pretend to be Uncle Max working to defend the mountain. And it just made me cry to get that text, because it just, that it so often feels like the actions that we take don't have an impact, and like we can't make a change, but anything that we do has ripple effects. It all does, and it all has impact, and it all changes something, and the change may not be exactly in the way that we would wish, or happen with the speed that we would want it to, but we're talking about this whole show is about revolutionary transformation. It's about massive changes that are needed across our society and our culture, and that, as much as I wish that would happen overnight, it just doesn't. It takes years, it takes decades, it takes generations, and that conflicts with the reality of the ever accelerating ecological collapse and how fast it is progressing and getting worse. And yet I do not know a way to short circuit that process, beyond doing what we're doing, pushing for more strategy, and trying to find the biggest leverage points, and just keep working. So yeah, I'm glad that you're there with those kids, Jennifer, and
Yeah.
sharing the knowledge and the values that I know you are.
Yeah. And listening, I would add that too. I mean, just from my perspective, listening to the land, and listening to your dreams, and listening to spirit. A lot of the voices that we are taught not to be able to even acknowledge, let alone listen to.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll share a few things that I'm working on, and then maybe we can start to wrap up, and people can share some closing comments and thoughts. For me, a big focus right now is building this new organization. It looks at this point like it's going to take the form of an international confederation made up of different groups and campaigns and organizations and individuals all over the world. So that's going to include some groups that I'm already a part of, and maybe some others that don't exist yet. We may, so for example, right now, Protect Thacker Pass is fiscally sponsored by Fertile Ground Conservancy, a small group recently changed its name from Fertile Ground Institute, but a small nonprofit I've been part of for many years. But we may create a new organization for to operate in the United States, to be able to take tax deductible donations and focus on strategic resistance. I'm working on, I don't know if I've shared about this, but I'm collaborating with some folks in Southeast Asia and in the Congo to work on a scientific paper about lithium mining in the Congo. It's probably going to be a while before that comes out, but there's a lot of lithium in the Congo in addition to cobalt that we all hear about, and the exploration is ramping up there. The Protect Thacker Pass campaign continues, as folks are aware who are on this show. It's largely our legal defense. The mine is being built right now, and there's really no legal way to stop it. We tried everything up to nonviolent direct action to stop it. So, I mean, the only thing that could stop that mine is right now is underground action, guerrilla warfare, something highly illegal, some really serious action. And that's the reality of corporate power and the system. Marilyn Frye talks about the bird cage of oppression, where if you only look at one rung of the cage, you can't see why the bird wouldn't just fly past it. But as you gain a greater perspective, you start to understand an interlocking system that composes a cage that does not allow the occupant to escape. And that's the type of situation we're in the environmental movement. There's an interlocking system of reasons why the movement keeps losing over and over and over again. And until we find a way to, frankly, probably just smash the cage, then I think we're unlikely to find a way out. So we're continuing to do our legal defense. We're also continuing to organize in the region on other mining projects and energy projects. A lot of that is happening behind the scenes. It's not really something that I can share any details of right now, but I'm actually just headed to Nevada tomorrow to collaborate with folks down there, working with tribes and different allies to educate and build opposition and strategize about the next steps. Again, the ripple effects of what happened at Thacker Pass, broadening outwards. We're also starting to organize against offshore wind turbines here on the west coast of the United States, of Turtle Island. There is big offshore wind projects planned for California, Oregon, and Washington State. It is staggering to me to just think of the scale of this. These turbines will be 900 feet tall, and the floating foundations for them, they'll be in deep water, so they can't actually put a foundation right down into the base of the ocean. It's thousands of feet deep there in these areas off the west coast. And so they'll be on floating platforms like an oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico, that's anchored down to the seafloor with gigantic chains and cables. So these projects will literally involve hundreds of miles of chains and cables, as chains as thick as my body, a link as thick as a human body. And the actual floating platforms are about the size of a baseball stadium, each one. And they're talking about hundreds and hundreds of these out in the Pacific Ocean, which is the greatest wilderness on the planet. So we're starting to organize, and we're starting to fight. There's a lot of opposition to these projects actually on the West Coast. Largely thus far, it's from fishermen and the fishing industry, which there are a lot of legitimate criticisms of, but I'm talking to some of those folks, and and there are some who do it far more sustainably and responsibly than others. And there's a lot of opposition from tribes. Quite a few of the tribes on the coast are speaking out against these projects vociferously, rejecting them because they see what is happening. They see another big industrial project coming into their region with, the illusion of consultation and dialogue and public comment and so on. So I'm also working with Fertile Ground Conservancy to try and raise some money to preserve some old growth forest in Northern California. If anyone is interested in helping buy land to protect it forever, let me know, get in touch. We are working on that project slowly but surely. I'm doing my writing projects, starting to work on the Thacker Pass book, which I've been threatening to write for years. And then I'm also taking a master's program in degrowth, which we should probably have an episode about degrowth at some point and discuss. There's a lot of positive things to say and also a lot of serious criticisms that I think deserve some detailed discussion and conversation. So a few closing points, and then I'd love to hear any closing thoughts from anyone else. Since the podcast is no longer with Deep Green Resistance, we don't currently have a fiscal sponsor for this, but I set up a little fundraising page because I just paid the last hosting bill out of pocket. It's not that much, but I'm without a job right now. So if folks who are listening are able to donate to this fundraiser to help support the podcast and more broadly to support this new confederation and the organizing that is emerging from the Green Flame and linked to it, the link for that will be in the description of this show. And we're also looking for new folks to join the team. As you've heard, we have big backlog of interviews that we want to do. We have interviews that we've already done that are sitting there waiting for editing because we're all really busy and don't have time. Years ago, I was just remembering this, looking through the old episodes. We used to do full episodes, which would be, an hour and a half with poetry and different segments included in that. And then we would publish a short excerpt of that interview, knowing that people are busy and a lot of us don't have time to listen to an hour-long podcast, let alone 3.5 hours. Looking at you, Renee. We would pull out like the most important chunk of the whole conversation. And often it would be, between a minute and 5 minutes long. And we'd release that as a standalone episode, knowing that we're all busy, but knowing that, these brilliant people who come on the show, their voices deserve to be heard. And that's something that we can do if we have more editors and producers who are willing to join us and volunteer and help with the show, is, just listen carefully to the shows, note those really powerful segments and pull those out in editing to create new excerpts to make the Green Flame more widely available to a bigger audience. We're also going to need to start a new YouTube channel. Right now, we're just streaming this on my personal YouTube, which is not very professional. And I'd love to get a dedicated Green Flame channel up and running at some point. So if folks are interested in getting involved in some way, reach out to us. You can just search my name online and you'll find my contact info. And that's really all I have to say. I'm so glad that you all can take the time to be here today. We've been on for about an hour and a half, so we've probably lost a lot of folks who are listening, but I want to make sure that people have a chance to say any closing words they want to share, or maybe somebody wants to bring up a new big topic and continue this conversation for another 2 hours.
I'm just going to say, talking about the youth, and I'm really proud of the youth right now not only in this country, but all over on the college campuses. It's like deja vu all over again. And they were on the right side of history in 68, 72. They stopped the Vietnam War. So I sure hope they can stop apartheid. And they stopped apartheid in South Africa, and so let's see what they can do in Palestine. It's very interesting. It's come on quickly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carl. And thanks to all the students and the young people out there taking action. Really admire them.
Yeah, kind of have something to add to that. Like also what you were saying before, Max, about this work that you're doing being slow, gradual work, and there being no real way around that. And then also relating to what, Saba was saying about us being more and more sick, and the irony of expecting to be healthy in a world that's being treated as it is. Rebecca was, I think, speaking about that too, and Jennifer speaking about this connection to land that we need to rebuild, and looking at that through her matriarchal studies. And Max, when you were talking about points of leverage, like I think that is the most powerful point, and the point of leverage that this ashram, Isha ashram, definitely speaks to is the longing, the corresponding longing that just builds and builds and builds in people, the more that disconnection progresses. And I wanted to share something that I watched this documentary the other night. I wanted to share something that I saw in that documentary that just captures something about how the world that we live in produces this unconscious but powerful longing. So I was watching this documentary about the gut. I think it's quite new, and it's based off of a book called Gut, which is by this woman called Julia with a G-I, Julia Enders. Her book's very good. She's an incredible scientist who's done heaps of investigation into gut and gut issues. And the whole documentary was basically about microbes and microorganisms that live in our gut, and how important they are, and how these populations are decreasing, and what scientists are doing in response to help people with the illnesses that are produced as our guts, including mental health issues like depression, as we lose these the microbial diversity in the gut. And the very last, the main solution that was proposed was, I was sitting there horrified, actually. I was meant to be all open-minded, but they showed this one woman, no judgment to her, but apparently you can repopulate your gut with healthy and more diverse microbial life by taking that from the feces of another human being. So they actually showed this woman who's dealing with a lot of gut issues. She's living with her partner. Her partner opens the fridge, takes out a shit that he did earlier that day, puts it in the blender, and then at home they make these capsules out of his poo that she can consume to help repopulate her gut with microbes that come from him. And I'm like, okay, so this is the kind of we're talking about vision. So rather than talking about things like soil health and reconnecting to the land and defending the land, this documentary is showing how we can open our minds by accommodating the notion of literally eating each other's feces. And that's how we can deal with some of the issues that we're, physical and mental health issues that we're facing. And I'm noticing the media is getting better and better at kind of presenting ideas like that are actually really dystopian, as if, just be a little open-minded and you can accommodate this, you can accept this. But actually, the more we do, the more we're presented with these images, the more, this animal, natural part of us is going, that's not what I'm here on earth for. That's not the kind of life I'm here to live. And I feel like that longing, that yearning for something for a vision, for a life that is not being presented to us in the mainstream media or in the world around us can only be growing and growing. So I just wanted to contribute that as well. I know we're all used to feeling small and marginal and incremental in terms of the changes we can make. But yeah, I just have this image from this documentary of this poo in a container in the fridge, like as a way of, a solution to human problems of human well-being, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. People are definitely wanting more, and definitely wanting to go home, and definitely wanting to reconnect. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll say something. I was going to say, Renee, listening to what you just said, that is actually a therapy that they're developing for a very particular syndrome called Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, which only affects about 1,000 people in the world right now. I know this because one of Shazad's cousins had a baby 2 years ago who has Pitt-Hopkins, and it's a very, very rare disease. And one of the main things is gut issues. And so that's exactly what they're doing. They're looking into how to people the guts of people who are affected with Pitt-Hopkins with somebody's healthy feces, somebody who has lots of microbes. So there's that. I just wanted to thank actually Max and Jennifer for the 100 episodes of The Green Flame, your commitment to this, even though you feel like it's been slow because it's been 5 years. And I also wanted to say that I'd be happy to contribute money for Max, you were saying something, so that we can keep it going. So maybe we can be in touch after this and you can tell me what is needed. And yeah, good luck to all of us, because I feel the weight nowadays, I do. And I have two young people who are my children, 20 and 21, who are probably going to have to face the brunt of what's coming down. So yeah, thank you to all of you for your love and your commitment. And before I forget, someone else I think I would love to see interviewed, if we could get them, or one of them, are the two young men who were in that film, All That Breathes. The two young men in India who have that sanctuary for birds, eagles and owls. Like, incredible film.
They're on my list, Saba. Absolutely.
Cool.
Powerful film. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saba. I just want to say about that proposed solution in the documentary. They were suggesting that this could be a solution for many, many different ailments, and I just wanted to say that I wasn't trying to be judgmental about it being used where appropriate, but it was
no.
no, it's okay.
Judgmental at all. I think that no, it makes me profoundly sad that, but I also think that it's a sign of where we are just culturally, as you said. It's like this. When I said that people are surprised that they're ill, I didn't mean that. I mean, that it's not that they're surprised that they're ill, but they don't connect it with the health of the planet, the land base that we live on. It's like, how would you expect to be healthy when everything around you is compromised? All the most important systems, our food system, our water system, the soil is depleted, the air is polluted. Like, why do you expect to be well?
Yeah. And then, like Max is often talking about, and a lot of the DGR books as well, of like, the way that you diagnose the problem is going to, lead to the solution that you come up with. So if you look at the problem in isolation, it will lead to some interesting solutions.
Absolutely. Rebecca, how about you?
I'll just leap in. I just want to say thank you all. I really honor what you're doing here. I think it's been said already, but the mainstream media and the kind of information that gets out on podcasts or news into the world leaves out essential information and censors, what really needs to be heard. Um, I've experienced some of that as well around just even talking about dreams as a way to listen to the earth, or even around talking to nature is something worthwhile. I've been censored. And I just want to honor what you're doing by having 100 episodes and going on, that the kinds of stuff that you're sharing is so essential for the world. So I'm just grateful to be a part of it for the other episodes and for this episode, and so grateful for what you're willing to do. And I'm glad to be in touch with either of you, Max or Jennifer, about any way that I could support in the future. And I'll keep my thoughts going. There's been some great ideas mentioned for future people, and I'll keep my thoughts out too. And if there's any other way I can support you. And yeah, I just honor, the world is traumatized. We have ancestral trauma, we have cultural trauma, we have our own individual traumas, and yet at the same time, we're making a difference. There are micro moves that are huge moves that we can do, and you're doing that in having this podcast. So I just want to honor that, and I'm so grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks for everything you do and for being with us. Jennifer, any closing words?
I'm holding on to vision. I'm holding on to vision right now. And I looked up manifestus, the Latin, and it's proof. The meaning is proof. And connected with manifestus is stating obvious truth in a palpable form. I think that core is what I want to hold on to as we go into the next 100 or the next 1,000 episodes, or wherever we end up, until the struggle is done and we're all living sane lives again. But that's the vision I want to hold on to. I also have lots of ideas about how I'd like to get back into a studio setting where I feel most comfortable doing editing. I would love to do that. I would love to create a space, a physical space, to sit and listen and edit, which is one of the things that I fell in love with in the first place, with this whole process of creating these programs back when I was with the community radio station, is listening over and over and over again until the meaning becomes so deep and the voice becomes so near to my heart that I can hold it here. So that's kind of the two things: holding on to this vision of truth telling in a very palpable, real form, and then finding a way to get back into the editing so I can listen to all these voices again and again. And I am so grateful for this journey. I'm grateful to you, Max, for sparks flying and finally pulling this whole project together for this radical podcast. And to you, Renee and Rebecca and Carl and Saba, and to everyone who's been on the program, and to all of you out there who are listening and watching live for the first time. We'll be doing this again, and you are invited in with your comments, your ideas, your suggestions. We value you so much. That's why we're here, is for each other in community. Thank you.